Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Carl Goulet, and I am the gallery director here at 5 Points. Tonight's talk will be recorded and made available on our website this weekend. 5 Points Gallery is open Tuesdays through Sunday, 1 to 5 p.m. and by appointment. The exhibitions will be up through March 11th. Tonight, we are joined by all of our exhibiting artists. From our West Gallery, we welcome two artists, Sandra Filippucci and Tritscheller. Sandra's large-scale multimedia flowers emphasize the devastating nature of war as she reacts to the trauma of the war in Ukraine. Tritscheller's gestural bronze horse sculptures spark primal emotions that capture the rawness and endurance of resilience. From our TDP gallery, Schempp composes visual stories of crows that exude complex personalities using encaustic and mixed media. The two artists featured in our East Gallery include Fucigna and Posey, both of whom balance parallels of play and instinct in their work. Joe's mixed media work is rooted in process, experimentation, and innate qualities of the materials he uses. Former racer Posey creates his paintings through conscious thought, play, and intuition, and the works specific to this show are named on the regions around him. Moderating tonight's event is Matthew Best. Matt is a Hartford, Connecticut-based artist who received his BFA in painting from the University of Hartford and his MFA in painting from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Formerly a resident at the Arlington Art Center, he has exhibited in numerous shows on the local and national levels. If anyone has any questions throughout tonight's talk, you're welcome to type them in to the chat and Q&A boxes at the bottom of your screens. And I'll pass things over to Matt and we can get started.
Hey everyone, I will monitor the chat and the Q&A, and then if you have anything, like Carl said, just throw it in there. I have a list of questions for everyone, kind of collective questions, individual questions, but if you have questions for each other or want to crosstalk, I'm just here to facilitate and more interested in what all of you have to say than what I'm have to say. So thanks everyone for coming. We had an interesting discussion before any of you got here. So I had an idea of how to start, and I kind of want to pick up with something we ended with that all of you missed. And it was something Sandra and I were talking about, kind of everyone. But the idea that we are living in very interesting times, and that art is a reflection of the times that we are living in. And I was just curious how all of you think your art is a reflection of the time we are living in whatever way that manifests for you. And whoever wants to take it, jump in.
I can jump in on that. When March of 2020 happened, the studio that I work in was closed down for almost 2 months. And so I had no access to my art supplies. And since I mostly work narratively, I decided that I would tell the story of what I was experiencing each day through the antics that I could observe from the crows that were in our backyard. A murder of crows had flown in and were there for 2, maybe even 3 months. And so the image that you're seeing there, for instance, is when I walked outside one day from a grocery store, there were these blue plastic gloves, this dangerous litter.
Terrific drawing, Gay.
Oh, thank you.
That's terrific.
And so I drew daily for about 80 days, and that gave me an anchor to my days. I mean, I was recording what I was seeing. I was feeling like I was living through historic times. And so that series of drawings eventually ended up as a self-published book. Here's some of the antics of the crows. This is a crow that was a large crow. I thought it was kind of one of the stupider ones, actually, but you can see that these crows are, his flock or his murder is flying away. He was busy pruning, and I was observing him. He looks up, he shakes his head, he looks confused, and then finally flew away. So I came to the studio and recorded that as late to the party. Or, I live on a lake. So, watching their reflections is something I like to play with. And the materiality of the material of encaustic itself lends a lot to this too, because I'm working with a torch. So I can get this liquid looking background, but then with a smaller pencil torch, I can go in and do a more detailed painting on top of that. That's Congress. So here we're seeing, again, just the antics of these crows as I observe them and sketch them and then go into the studio and create what I've seen. This is a piece that was a prelude to that whole crow series. This is the end of a migration series where you see the tail feathers are people, and this is a yearning to cross over that fence that's below, that nasty fence. And again, gestures and calls that fascinated me that I tried to illustrate with this liquid media that, as I said, is worked with a torch. So it's a challenge to work. This is a fantasy. They don't really like my dog. That's me digging into the surface. The wax itself is malleable and can be sculpted, can be carved, can be obscuring what's beneath, it can be excavating what's beneath. And this is a good example of experimenting with the encaustic media. And another, exploration of watching their calls, which I got fascinated with. This is a charcoal drawing that was transferred, and there was a very dedicated couple. They show up in a lot of the work as well.
This is absolutely fantastic stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Too, I think it's stunning. Sorry, I have a kind of stammer that as a result of the phoenix.
I can hear you.
They're not only beautiful, but they're original. I've never seen anything like it.
Ask Copper about her work, because what she did was very different from the way that she was working, and it definitely, in my opinion, reflected what was going on in the world and with her emotionally. Can I ask you about that, Copper?
Yeah. I did a series of horses, and they kind of were representing their landscape and their changes. So, they kind of throughout time have been kind of recreated for their needs, for what suits humans. And so I just kind of was playing with that, a plow horse or a horse that was used to pull a carriage. And now they're really quite elegant, and they jump fences and do all sorts of beautiful things with humans. So I was really kind of playing with kind of the deconstruction, reconstruction of horses, but also trying to keep them looking like their original landscape, because that's what's happening around the world. Landscapes are changing, and it was a lot about what was happening to me. I felt like a lot of things were changing in my life and in my emotions, and physically.
Us did the same thing because of COVID. But I mean, this really is a departure from what you were doing. But I have to reference the review that came out today. Shaughnessy said, your horses look like they're either headed toward oblivion or that they're going to have another life, that they're reforming themselves to have another life, i.e. grow another limb. It could be either very negative or very positive.
I guess it's what human nature decides to do with the world around it. I mean, we control everything. So depending on how we decide to go forward with animals.
Is your work optimistic?
I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like it's kind of left up to the viewer. I'm not trying to tell anybody how they have to see things. It's just, we're in that struggling point of where do we go next? Or where do I go next? I mean, I guess my art, I think a lot of people's art is more of a self-examination of what they're going through. It's kind of their process. So
Can I ask a question? Why did you choose to create this surface that is the grays and whites? Is this bronze?
It is bronze. It's basically it's a color palette that I work with my other work, and I guess I kind of respond to it, and I like the simplicity of it, and I think that's probably why. I like the contrast.
Thank you.
The word that's, oh, sorry.
Yeah, they are wonderful.
Captain Nemo, remember him? I mean, there's a real sense of a ruggedness of the depth of water. I mean, I suppose it would be interpreted as a great many ways because it's so universal at some level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I really like the feeling of the materiality of the surface, that I can feel your hand in it.
Oh, thank you. I've been working with plaster and wire, and so it's kind of a new material. I used to work a lot with wax. I would melt wax and work with that, and or oil clay. So this was a new way of working for me as well.
I was thinking when I first saw them, the word that came to mind for me was vulnerable. It made me think, especially this one. I thought of Francis Bacon, who can seem really nightmarish, but I think there's a vulnerability to his work. Degas' sculptures of ballerinas that they're always kind of, especially this one, the way it's balanced on one leg and seemingly defying gravity to some degree.
Thank you. Yeah, vulnerable would be a very powerful emotion in there.
I think the optimism and the hope for a better future is contained in the title Resilience. It's an implied hopeful statement.
Thank you. Good.
All right, who's next?
I'd be delighted to. Talk is what I do best.
Okay.
Fairly recent paintings. I'm 78 years old and I've been painting my whole life. So there are a lot of influences out there and a lot of things I don't like as I look at them now. But at the time, it was exciting. And I find that for me, painting is competitive. I went to RISD and we do figure drawings, 20 of us in the class, and then at the end we prop them up against the wall. And it was a versatile appeal to have certain ones. And I really got into this competitiveness largely because of racing. Years in the cockpit have blunted my hearing, and I happen to have ear things in order to hear better.
Is this a new way of working?
Well, I never looked at it that way. I think I just keep going, and one direction leads to another direction, and sometimes I go back to earlier work, but mostly not. I find that I get so excited by what I see right now in front of me. And I mean, you can see it in this picture here. There are all sorts of little vignettes all through it. Those are I didn't plan them. They just sort of appeared.
When do you know that you stop painting or overpainting? When do you know that?
That is a key question in my, I arrive at a point, this is a good example of it, where the thing looks okay, but what do I do now? Do I go forward with a little chance of success because it's a gamble, or do I sit back and let it be? And in that never works. I have to. Ellen, my wife, has said I ruin more paintings than anybody else.
Do you feel that you need to go back into it right then?
Well, that's sort of right, but what gets closer to it, I think, is the appeal of the paint itself. I mean, the crows are brilliant, and this tries to do the kind of thing that you see there, which is a spontaneous kind of thing. And, you know, my wife tries to stop me from, secretary is now chiming in on what should be removed from the paintings. And, it seems like I stumbled into a.
It reminds me a little bit of Susan Rothenberg.
Oh, yeah.
Rothenberg has been, she just passed along with some amazing people, but she had a one-woman show. And when I walked in, I immediately got upset. I got yelled at by an art teacher from the Maryland Institute of Art for exactly this. Like I reacted too quickly without looking. And I stood there, forced myself to stand there and really look. And I got over all those initial impulses and thought, oh my God, this is brave work. So I say to you, Sam Posey, that's brave work.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's awfully nice to hear.
Feels very strong, like when you're in a race car. There's the power and the energy. Yeah.
A video for NBC that was titled Racing and Art. Or it's been tremendously popular because people don't think of those two things as being.
Sam, these pieces were not in the show, right? The pieces you had at the show were of places in Connecticut.
No, these were in the show.
Were they? I was there. So what's the first one? The very first one up in the, yes,
Upper left.
Torrington. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love it.
Oh, would you go to the next one?
This one was rescued from by my brother, who came in and said he liked it a lot. So I stopped on it.
I have a question about this one. It was the only one in the show that I could see letters in visibly. What was the process behind that? I thought it was interesting. Is it in other work and you cover it up, or is this kind of atypical?
It was sort of atypical. I just spent the morning with Jasper Johns. So the lettering just came out, and I really enjoyed it. And my son worked with me a little bit on the holding the stencils up.
Were the letters spelling something specific?
No, they were not.
Okay, so it's arbitrary letters.
Random
letters.
Random letters, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to go further and didn't dare because I like this one, and I don't know, it was sort of a tribute to Jasper, I guess. I've been very lucky to know Frank Stella, who we worked together on a project for BMW, which was great. I mean, we had heritage there. BMW had commissioned Alexander Calder to do a paint job on their car. Yeah, and I was selected to drive it at Le Mans. So that was kind of an amazing time. He came Calder himself came to the track the morning of the race, and everybody was swarming around him, and trying to get a picture of him with me and me with him, and the car and everything. He was an incredible guy with a LL Bean jacket tucked up under his enormous SUV. But it was so chaotic there. And Calder was looking around, and he found me. I had a driver's suit on, so he figured he knew what was going on. And so Calder said to me, Ellen is prompting me, so that means this is an okay thing to do. Calder was
Drinking champagne.
And very far drunk. And he came over to me and he put his arm around me and he said, "What the fuck is going on?"
And he didn't give you a mobile, huh?
Nice.
Yeah,
Very
Really?
nice to have a mobile.
yeah, really. Thank you so much.
All right, Joe, let's hear about your work.
Well, I want to go back to the original question,
Yeah.
you know,
Please do.
Matt, about, the COVID and how it affected us, obviously, and how it affected our art. And, I've had some time just now to think about it. And I don't think COVID, there was not a dramatic shift in my work. COVID allowed me to, the work was probably a steadying force during that time, gave me structure. I'm lucky. I live in Weston. I'm in the woods. I'm not living in a small apartment in New York or something like that with, a lot of people living in them. I knew a lot of my students and stuff like that had a lot of those issues. And so, I had not a lot to complain about. And so, the opportunity, my studio's on my property. So all I had to do was walk across the hall to go to, do my work. And, during the regular times, between, school and stuff, I sometimes didn't have as much time. So I would say that my artwork, pretty much stayed, but it was everything else around me, and what was going on around me that was very difficult in certain respects, or different, should I say. And the idea that, I teach at Norwalk Community College, and I had to totally rethink my way of teaching, online, learning the online technology, Blackboard, which was a humongous grind. And it was very, very difficult. I don't know if anyone else teaches or anything like that. And so in many respects, that took up a great deal of time, but my artwork was a steadying force and gave me a lot of relief. And so in many respects, Matt, I came out a different person because for my teaching in many respects, and what I was able to learn and kind of shift out of the box for my teaching. But as I said before, I think my artwork just kind of progressed along as it usually does.
Materials you choose them because they're based on a grid? Is that
Nope.
why?
No,
Is there grid
no.
like?
No. I basically all my life I've used. I've really always been an abstract artist. Figurative work. I don't know if it doesn't interest me or just,
Why this
I don't
material?
want to. Hold on a second. And so a lot of times the materials that I use drive my work along. And I've over the years I've used I would say nondescript industrial materials. I did a whole series with truck tire inner tubes. I've used scrap steel, a lot of welding and things like that. I've used clay. I've used plastic fencing and plastic and metal fencing for probably about 20, 25 years now. Why did I choose it? Because I was on my property, I was putting deer fencing around, and I basically, had this, oh, that's kind of an interesting material, and I want to, and it's just as simple as that, and it's always been that way for me. Take these materials, I explore them. I kind of follow the direction that the material wants to give me. And eventually I kind of gain a control over it. And then I begin to, overall, looking at my work, kind of create these odd, strange, I think somewhat sexually suggestive, humorous sculptures that, there's a good balance between the materials that I use and the subject matter, and creates kind of a nice balance, both things going on there. They're all attached using cable ties, which have their pros and cons. All the materials that I use in general, when I, they're somewhat common. You look at them and you go, oh, well, that's deer netting, or that's barrier fencing, or something like that. But a lot of times it's not obvious out of the gate when people look at them. And so, the pieces that are on the, that are being shown right now, these are the newest, and they are, one of my goals with this is I wanted to make smaller pieces. Okay. And I wanted to make pieces which I could, because, I could kind of be more playful, and I could also, work faster.
Which ones are sexually suggestive?
Well, probably a lot of the, in subtle ways. I mean, that one they were showing with the, sexually, anatomically, a lot of the hose pieces have that kind of feel.
Just thinking the hose piece.
Again, I'm not talking about these pieces in specific either. The one with the on the right with the hose kind of coming out. That's got the black hose number 3. That's got a I would say kind of it could be a mouth. I've done pieces where they kind of look like the inside, structure of a figure, organs, breast forms, buttock forms, suggestive but not specific. Okay. But it's an area that my work floats in. I am not choosing a specific subject or a specific topic, as with Sam's work, and I think it was a good pairing that that was put together with both of us. My work is very much about play, experimentation, the unexpected, accidents, and I've always worked that way. I do not work with the idea of starting out with a planned idea that I draw out or do sketches of or anything like that. None of that. It's all through play, whether it be a hose where I'm kind of gesture drawing with that, or with these new ones, these pedestal pieces where I construct kind of shapes and forms out of the plastic fencing, which is kind of easy to manipulate and work with, and kind of follow the directions that, the materials and the ideas and pieces being put together, take me. I don't think I don't specifically have a deep story with lots of meaning and, this is where it's coming from, or angst, or, but my work is what it is. And if people want to apply some kind of a meaning or thought or something to that, I think it's great. I love it. And that's what I like, rather than it being something very, very specific.
While
yes.
Carl has this one up, I was intrigued. While Carl has this image up, I was intrigued by the title.
Yes.
The two of them are veiled threat, whereas the others are abstraction in black.
Title, yeah.
So what's the process behind that? Because like one, I thought the wall pieces felt very different in some ways than the freestanding pieces, but
They
then the
do.
titles kind of went into other
Yes.
suggestion.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I don't believe in, if I find a title that I like, that seems appropriate, I apply it to it. If I don't have one, I'm not going to force it. I mean, on some of my pieces too, I can just, if I find a good title later on, I'll rename it.
Mhm.
Okay, as a little
Yeah.
bit more information.
Mhm.
But I mean, this kind of, I did two of these. There are two of these pieces in the show like this, and veiled threat. It's just kind of, that kind of feels like a veil. I mean, I was doing a series
I could go for that.
where I was using drapery as an influence, and this piece right here, in many respects, has the drapery. I did a whole series previous to the drapery work where I was doing these kind of drip pieces out of the fencing. So you get, on the left, you get the kind of the drapery. You get a little drip there, kind of in between. And then I have the hose element. So I'm kind of combining all these elements that I have kind of been working with and seeing how they work together. But I mean, veiled threat, just, it sounded good. And that's really, maybe clever. That's really all I'm thinking about. But all the freestanding sculptures are, black abstraction #1. It is what it is. I mean, I don't want to, I want to maybe give some information, but if something doesn't fit or I don't feel right about it, I'll just go straight ahead and just kind of describe it.
So thinking about the wall pieces again, is gravity are you collaborating with gravity with these, or do they kind of defy gravity more than they seem because of the nature of the material?
I think gravity, I think is part of all of them, the freestanding ones and these. I mean, the wall hanging pieces. Again, I did an earlier series where these drip series, where I'd been using, and it was probably, if anyone saw the previous show I had 3 years ago, I had these 3 walls where I had this colored silicone on these hanging, kind of wooden, doors, old doors, and I would put the silicone on there and let it drip down, and it was kind of like a moving painting, live painting, and so I created a whole series based on those, but I was doing the dripping, or I was expressing the dripping through, through kind of manipulation of the plastic fencing. And so there's a sense of gravity, but, they look like they're moving, but they're not. These, the drapery, same thing. There's a sense of gravity, things pulling down. The hose, when I started doing the hose pieces, when you put it kind of gesture draw it on the wall, it's going to fall. It's going to go with, it's like paint or anything like that. If you're working on the wall vertically, it's going to drip down. But I mean, overall, when I look back at my work, I think gravity, especially the wall hanging pieces, gravity is just kind of a natural element of it. Is it conscious? No, I'm just letting the materials do what it wants.
My other material question, you talked about using prefabricated materials and industrial materials, which makes me think of minimalism, and your work is not minimal, it's maximal, but do you have a relationship with minimalism in some way, do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point, Matt. I do like minimalism. There's a clarity to it. It's very much about the material. Okay, because that's sometimes, I think about Donald Judd, it's been reduced down to that material. And so I think about that in terms of kind of a clean, clear, but somewhat expressive form. But I want the material to be an active participant in it. So, yeah, I do. I mean, I got a lot of stuff going on in my head's influences, but, I do think about it, and I kind of grew up in the time of minimalism.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
The pedestal pieces feel much more structured and contained, almost more purposeful and obviously more geometric.
Mhm.
Did that happen after or during the pandemic?
Well, these came after the pandemic.
So
I
was
mean,
it, I'm looking because I looked at the pieces on the wall are fluid and flowing, almost veil-like,
mhm.
and these feel more architectural.
Yeah.
In some sense, well, I use the word structured, where I can understand the structure in a more controlled way.
Mhm.
And I'm probably reading too much into this, but it's almost like controlled, a little more controlled in a world that feels out of control.
Yeah, I mean,
In a way.
these don't have anything. What was the influence with these? And Gay, you know ceramics, correct?
Well, yeah, real well.
Okay. When this piece in particular, I had a couple of shows or was preparing for some shows over COVID, and so I was working in a particular way, a lot of the hose pieces and stuff, and they were big and not real saleable and things like that. And I'm kind of like, I got to try something a little different. And I'd seen 2 ceramic shows. There was one in particular that was at the Met. With this person, this collector donated his collection of ceramics, and it was a fabulous show. And I knew, I went to Alfred University undergraduate. It was a wonderful group of ceramicists, graduate students
Yes.
when I was there, and clay was a big influence on my early work. I mean, I used clay a lot, and so it was kind of like I wanted these pieces, or they started out as, again, the first one, the one on the bottom left, started out as kind of a response, kind of like I'm going to make kind of pieces that are based on the realm of the size of ceramics, certain elements of ceramics, handles, things like that.
Mhm.
And basically, the way I construct my pieces is it's kind of like hand building.
It feels to me like the flowers and the paintings and the horses, we are all really dealing with materiality in a way that's 3-dimensional, even though paintings obviously are on a flat surface. The depth and the marriage with the other room with more sculpture just seems so compatible, because it seems like the sensibility was equally about the material itself as well as the content.
Go to Sandra next.
Very good point. Yes. I'm very pleased. I mean, I think it's an honor to show there. It's an absolutely gorgeous gallery. And somehow, I guess, Carl, you facilitated this, the choice of everyone.
Yes.
Well done.
So, and it takes a village, questions.
We never get to hear you talk, actually. Like, you talked with other people that how your work was influenced by the pandemic, and then today's the anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine, correct?
1 year,
So
yeah.
so what about, tell us about that, your
Okay,
process.
where do I begin?
I don't know, I read your blog post, so there's a lot to unpack there, but
Try to cut to the chase.
Okay.
I was living in Santa Fe for many years. COVID hit. My family was out here. I was convinced I was going to die out in Santa Fe. So I made arrangements to come back. I couldn't find anything because that's when real estate was priced so high. Luckily, found an industrial bakery where I now live. It used to be called the Matthews 1812 House, right off Route 7, known euphemistically as the Fruitcake Factory. Salem. So because of that studio, and because then the war kicked in 1 year ago, I put aside all my plans. I was about to go into 3D ceramics printing for a whole body of work that I had developed. And I put it all aside because of the war. And I couldn't tell you at the time why I did that. I did not know why I did that. But as I did the work, almost like a zombie, I realized this was about my mother. So if you want to talk autobiographical, this is about as autobiographical as it gets. I found out why my mother was the way she was, which was dysfunctional and angry, didn't trust anybody, trusted flowers because they couldn't hurt her. She had post-traumatic stress syndrome. I'm convinced of it, from World War II, London Blitz. I am 72 years old. So this is generational. This war, World War II, it's generational. It just keeps,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And right. And then when I saw the images on the news about what was going on in Ukraine, I'm seeing my mother in the subway. I'm seeing her friends and her neighborhoods getting blown up. Again, I started this not knowing. I found out about it and I realized, oh, wow. So this series, more than any other body of work I have ever done, was revelatory. And I was able to, it was cathartic because I was able to make peace with who she was. I did not know that that's probably what happened to her, that's why she was so twisted. Did not know. It freed me. And I'm hoping to build on future iterations of this kind of work. I want it to be personal, to just, because it's our language. Each one of us is trying to develop our own language that's unique to us. And I will not at this point let anything stop me. I have to just do this like I'm speaking to you, that's the language. Okay. I expected all of you to hit me with tech questions like, how did you do that? But none of you have. And the review that came out today, she didn't address it either. And I think this is a triumph. I made work that employs technology that you're not noticing immediately.
This will sound somewhat shallow in comparison, but I was intrigued by the minimal or non-color achromatic color palette, and then there's two I think that have, one has the and then the very bright one.
There's one very bright one.
So War Babies is because it was about children being killed. So I used primaries. Now I have there's a total of 3 of War Babies. So I chose it to be because it's so offensive and upsetting to me that this this person would target civilians. He really didn't care. It's just broad spectrum, just drop the bombs. And this is the most upsetting thing to me. And there's no other way to convey it than primaries. That's the answer.
The red kind of does double duty in that case too. Then.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely does. Yes.
You know, it's an interesting mix of childlike primaries and then blood.
Yeah.
It's
very austere. Yeah, because most of the work is austere and monochromatic. And I did not want to bring in Ukraine colors. I did not want to bring in sunflower, all of which are emblematic, right?
That's what I thought was interesting. Is I've seen other artists try to tackle the same issue, and like you said, they used Ukraine colors or sunflowers off as being kind of trite. And like, the artist that popped to mind was Anselm Kiefer, who's dealing with something really specific, but it's universal at the same time. So I think that's kind of
he's a
similar.
Great reference. He's a great reference. I was a New York trained illustrator, so I'm very sensitive to overcoming the impulse to be narrative in a specific way. Yeah.
My father was killed in World War II, as it happens, and I've often wondered what it would be like if he was alive. Since I can invent my father, in effect, he told me. And that's a kind of relief at times.
Or is generational. We all feel it all the way down. We just feel it. My grandchildren will feel it, you know, because of how people were affected. All families are affected. I needed to find a way, and my mother loved flowers, as I said at the beginning, that she trusted flowers. So that became the symbolic choice to try to avoid being too narrative. Yeah. To be more symbolic. That seemed to have more power. It spoke more broadly to be symbolic.
What about the text though? Because I feel like the text adds a narrative element to it at times. It's a bit more specific than.
Well, because this is an ongoing war, and a lot of people either are not paying attention to what's going on over there. So the only way to make them focus in what this is about is naming it a certain way, or
Okay.
putting that. And you notice I didn't do it on all pieces.
Yeah.
Some pieces I did do it, almost like a diary. As we all know, we do a lot more work than actually goes up on the walls.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I felt it was a diary, and sometimes I felt like writing. That's all,
So your mark's more intuitive. The mark's in writing, because you do both. Is it more of an intuitive thing? You just kind of jump in there, or?
Completely into it. This is the beauty of this, is
Yeah.
that if you look at my previous way of working, all that Joan of Arc work, I felt it went into too much illustration. It was too specific. And here I kind of forced myself to work as fast as I could. The faster, the better for me. Because if I didn't nail it within a day, or maybe two, Alex Katz says, I understand, works the same way. You get it down and you walk away.
It gets clogged.
It's
true.
muddy. And it looks strained,
Yeah, overworked or.
Yeah.
And we sign one of our drivers up for you. You have the speed you're looking for.
Yes. I'm looking for tremendous speed.
Yeah.
It literally, I have to clear, you have to empty out everything and just grab whatever tools you're working with and go for it. I apparently don't work well if I have too much time to think about it. Then I become a New York illustrator all over again.
Well, I think that the scale of the pieces has an impact as well.
The scale's stunning.
That's why I chose to. Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Gay. Thank you. Yeah, they're big. Frankly, they can go way bigger. I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm just getting ready for my next body of work, but.
Well, they're almost confrontational.
Well, they're life size. They're your size.
They're a flower, but they're impressive. Huge.
Flowers have a certain quality to them that this piece of art has as well, which is something that is developing out of nowhere, really. The autobiographical material is interesting, but not as interesting to me as the finished product, because it's just so spectacular that you almost don't want to spoil it with dialogue.
Thank you, Sam.
Well,
thank you. That's why I didn't write on all of them. I realized in some cases I didn't even want to sign the front. I just leave it alone, walk away. Yeah, right, Gay? I mean, this is the challenge. Walk away. Before
I always thought it'd be a good idea to have somebody with a sledgehammer behind me going, "You're done."
Yeah, but I want to work even bigger. Just so you know, Sam, I want to go even bigger.
Bravo.
I think you're getting up as big as a car. We have one for you.
Okay, and I can put the art on the car?
Yes, or as Calder did, painting the car, and a curious assignment and a brilliant result. And then Frank Stella came along, and that's how I happened to befriend him, because the model of the car, took it from Munich and put it in the front of the airplane, a large model about 6 feet long. And they bought a first-class ticket for the model. So I was sitting there next to this gigantic plastic model Flight developed.
Okay, now we have the potentially awkward part where we invite the audience to ask questions, and if they don't, we might sit here quietly. So audience, questions are welcome. We still have about 5 minutes to go. You can type it into the chat or the Q&A. Otherwise, we can just wait a few minutes and wrap this up, or
Oh, no, we've got to make the most of this opportunity.
All
Okay, I guess nobody.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, artists. And that's a wrap.
all right,
Thank you,
thank
Carl.
you.
Thank you.
Thank